Welcome to the Where Do Gays Retire podcast, where we help you in the LGBTQ plus community find a safe and affordable retirement place. Join Mark Goldstein as he interviews others who live in gay-friendly places around the globe. Learn about the climate, cost of living, healthcare, crime and safety, and more. Now, here's your host, Mark Goldstein.
Today, we're going to take you to Atlanta, Georgia, and our guest is Mark Camp. Mark is originally from Birmingham, Alabama. Mark moved to Atlanta in 1988 and has been there for 35 years. He began his real estate career 22 years ago and has helped numerous buyers and sellers in the metro Atlanta area. Mark focuses his sales mostly in the inside perimeter area, where a large percentage of the gay population lives. Mark lives with his partner, Cruse, and have been together for 25 years. You can contact Mark and you can go to his website at www.markcamp.com. That's markcamp.com. And his email address, in case you want to get in touch, is mark@markcamp.com. All right. And today we'll talk about Atlanta. We'll give you an overview. We'll talk about the lifestyle and culture, the LGBTQ community, healthcare, cost of living, and then we will wrap it up. So, Mark, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for your time and coming.
Oh, thank you. It's a pleasure.
And Mark, tell our audience where you moved from originally. Where did you originally live, and why did you decide to live in Atlanta?
I originally grew up in Birmingham, Alabama, and then after college, I took a job in Dallas, Texas, and stayed there for 2 years, and then was promoted to Atlanta. And so once I got to Atlanta, I've not left.
So it was kind of, you got there, you loved it, and why leave if you love a place, right?
Yeah, it's a good place to live, along with, I had family a couple of hours away, so it just made it an easy place to settle in.
And geographically, where is Atlanta in relation with Georgia? Where is it situated?
Atlanta's in the north part of Georgia, and it's the capital, and it was founded in 1837. And it was originally known as Marthasville, which was in honor of the governor's daughter, but then it was changed to the feminine name of the Atlantic, which was the railroad running through Atlanta. And Atlanta's symbol is a phoenix, which represents the city literally rising from the ashes, which it did after Atlanta was burned down during the Civil War. Atlanta is also known for the 1939 premiere of Gone with the Wind, written by Margaret Mitchell, which starred Vivian Leigh and Clark Gable.
Love that movie.
Yes, and Atlanta is linked to the civil rights movement in the 1960s, with Martin Luther King preaching at the historic Ebenezer Baptist Church. And in 1996, Atlanta became the international center of attention during the Summer Centennial Olympic Games. And so we now have become an international city.
And tell the audience, what's the population of Atlanta?
The metro area is about 50 miles wide, and the population is right under 6 million. The city of Atlanta has about 500,000 people, but with all the suburbs, you're really at right under 6 million.
Quite a large city or a metro area.
It is.
Kind of up there with Phoenix, too.
Yes, it's the 9th largest city according to the population.
Interesting. Tell us about the climate. I know it's down south and things tend to get a little bit hot and humid. So give us an example. I know it can't be as bad or as humid and hot as South Florida, but give us some sort of idea.
Well, in Atlanta, you do have 4 seasons, which is nice. On the average, there's 217 sunny days. It rains approximately 110 days. We get about 52 inches of rain per year and 1.5 inches of snow per year.
So snow.
Snow. Only 1.5 inches per year. May
Okay,
snow
I
one or
could
two
deal with
days,
that.
and that's it. The summer highs are normally in July are around 88 degrees, and in the winter, the lows around 33. Now, that's
Hmm.
averages, of course, and occasionally it will go over 100 degrees, maybe 1 or 2 days in the summer. And in those cases, you basically just use your air conditioning. Spring and fall are by far the nicest.
So you do get 4 seasons, and it sounds like the averages are cooler. It's cooler than Florida because you're way north of them. So,
You do need a jacket in the winter most of the time. And the averages are, 50, mid 50s and is a high. And then at night, I'm going into the 40s or 30s.
I could deal with that. That's what pretty much we have here too now in Phoenix. This winter especially has been a little chilly. So it's been going down to the 30s when you wake up in the morning, in the wee hours of the morning at 5 o'clock in the morning. It's been a little chilly, but so is it? It's a humid climate, isn't it?
Yes, it is humid in the summertime.
Okay. Do you get? We call it out west. We call it monsoon season. You call it probably rainy season. So is there a rainy season like in the summer?
Only, well, in June, they've actually moved Gay Pride and the parade to October because it was raining in the June season. But it's on and off. And if it rains, it may rain in the morning. In the afternoon, you have sunshine, or just the opposite. But it seems like every time there was a gay pride parade and everything was set up, it rained. And October's our least rainy season, so they moved it to follow coming out, the coming out day.
As Barbara says, don't rain on my parade. So now I have that tune in my head. Are there any like quick getaways in the summer to avoid the heat, or it's kind of like the same everywhere around?
Well, first of all, the airport is there's 8 domestic airlines and 9 international airlines, with nonstop flights to over 150 destinations and 70 international destinations to more than 50 countries. The airport's been recognized as the busiest airport in the world for 22 consecutive years, and 80% of the US population is within a 2 hour flight. So that helps if you want to get away. But then there are definitely some things to do outside of Atlanta within a 2 hour to 5 hour drive or a flight. There's there's North Georgia mountains, which are the end of the Appalachian Trail. So that tends to be where people go in the summer if it gets too hot. Also, there's Highlands, North Carolina, and Cashiers, North Carolina, which is about 2 hours and a half. And in Highlands, because of the elevation, it never gets above 82 degrees. So
Oh, nice.
on weekends when you're wanting to get away, that's the place to go. If you're looking for things to do, cities outside of Atlanta, Savannah, Madison, Georgia, which is an hour away, which was not burnt down after the Civil War. So you have a lot of antebellum homes, which a lot of gays like. There's plenty of lakes. There's probably our largest lake's Lake Lanier and then Lake Oconee, and those are both about an hour, hour and a half away. So there's boating, jet skis, all of the fun things you can do. And then you have Nashville, Tennessee, which has really become a hot area. Birmingham, Alabama has actually become a real foodie area. Chattanooga, Asheville, North Carolina, Greenville, South Carolina, Hilton Head. So there's plenty of places to go. So if you want to go hiking, biking, boating, there's plenty of things to do. And also we've got 6 beaches or 7 beaches you can get to, including outside of Savannah's Tybee Island, and then you've got the Golden Isles, which includes St. Simon's, Cumberland Island. Cumberland Island is where John F. Kennedy Jr. was married. And then Amelia Island, Hilton Head, and then you've got the Panhandle of Florida, which includes Panama City Beach, Pensacola, Gulf Shores, and Orange Beach. And those are all about 5.5 hours.
So not bad. I mean, you could do a long weekend, travel by car for a few hours, and be at all of these different places. That's quite impressive. There's a lot to do.
There is, and a lot of times what happens is if people have a second home where they want to go away, sometimes with the gay population, they'll go away during the week and then they'll come back to the city to enjoy the weekend with their friends and go to things like the cultural things like the symphony or a Broadway show, things like that.
Yeah, we'll get into that as well as far as culture is concerned. Now it sounds wonderful. So is living in an LGBTQ community important to you? Is there such thing in Atlanta as a gayborhood? And how do you feel about that? Is, being in the community, LGBTQ community, do you feel safe in Atlanta?
Well, the main area of gayborhood would be Midtown Atlanta, which is where your gay bars are. There used to be a bookstore, a lot of the local restaurants, things like that. But with the area has changed so much since I lived here that now pretty much any neighborhood you go to, you're going to find that there's a gay neighborhood or there's gays living in the neighborhood. And it just depends on what the person is looking for. If in Midtown, you're either going to be in an older home or you're probably going to be in a condominium, possibly a high rise. If you start moving out a little bit, you can get in a townhome or a single family home. And it just depends on if you need a yard for pets or things like that, or you have children and schools are important. But really, anywhere inside the perimeter you're going to find that there's gays everywhere. And then if you go outside the perimeter, you're still going to find that there's gays. It just may not be quite as much. And normally what happens is those people tend to drive back into the city to meet with their friends.
Okay, yeah. It seems like most of the gay population kind of congregates or likes to live within the city boundaries of any city.
Yes,
It's probably the same.
and we do have for retirees. We have Prime Timers, which is a gay organization, and they meet about once a month to go to a movie or go to a symphony, or sometimes they'll meet during the week for coffee. There's the Front Runners, which is a running group. There's a Black Tie group, which if you like to dress up, they have a gathering about, I think once a year is you get dressed up, but then you can also travel to different cities. There's other groups including bridge, tennis, golf. There's hiking, wine clubs, softball, flag football. There's a rainbow nudist group, and there's 3 to 4 nudist camps nearby within a 2-hour drive. So if you're into that, there's a group. There's something for everyone.
Yeah, it does sound like it. That sounds great. So you would say that the neighborhoods are kind of integrated now, right? It's like they're everywhere. We're everywhere.
We're everywhere. And what happened in Atlanta was when prices started going up, the gays would go into neighborhoods that were not quite as known or well done, and they would go in and renovate, and everybody started wanting to go to the different neighborhoods. And so now anywhere you basically go, there's everybody's got a gay neighbor somewhere.
Okay. Do you see any rainbow flags hanging from people's houses?
Absolutely.
Oh,
Anywhere
cool.
you're driving around, especially during Gay Pride, both in June and October, you will see the Gay Pride flags out. And there are
Great.
many businesses as well as shops, restaurants. You'll see a gay flag almost anywhere.
Now, we're talking the city. How about the metro area? Is it also as accepting in the metro area? Because I know once you go out of the metro area, it might be not so accepting.
It gets less as you go out, but I think people have just realized, like in Madison, Georgia, which is an hour outside, the gays went in and they started buying these antebellum homes, and so all of a sudden, you've got the culture, you've got nice restaurants, and it's a place to visit. And so the people that have done that, I think it's just all over. It's a cultural thing, and I just don't think it's as important to, as far as from the cultural standpoint, that people just don't care anymore. And it's kind of become popular to be around the gays and know the gays, and the great parties they put on, or and that type of thing. They have the nicer homes, and so people really want to be a part of that.
Yeah, it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be separate. Some cities it is. It's probably out of necessity, but it's nice when you see it integrated everywhere. So I'm sure Atlanta has its own gay bars.
Yes, there's only several have shut down, but there's probably 6 or 7 gay bars. There's an kind of an older bar that was hidden back when bars were kind of when the police were raiding them. But then we've got the Eagle, which is a leather bar, the Heretic, which is a dance bar. We've got one lesbian bar. So overall, if that's your thing, you want to go out to bars, there's definitely bars and places to go. And we also there's a couple of restaurants in town that actually, they don't really cater to gays, but it becomes a gay bar on a Friday night. There's a Colonnade on Cheshire Bridge Road, which most people, if they're coming to Atlanta, they've heard about. The Colonnade serves fried chicken, most of your fried foods. But what happens, they call it the gays or the grays and the gays, because the grays show up at 5 to 6, and then the gays come in at 7 and take over the whole restaurant. And it's known for the bartenders give you a nice pour, and you stand around waiting for your table for probably 30 minutes. And it has been known that you go in and you just know everybody in the bar.
I like that. I
Yeah,
like
it's
that.
fun.
We have a restaurant or two like that here in Phoenix. It's just your neighborhood gay restaurant, you know, that you feel
Absolutely.
very comfortable, and yeah, it's
Well,
a great place to socialize.
and that's true with more restaurants. Anywhere you go in Midtown Atlanta, you're going to see people, and it's basically a gay bar or a gay restaurant.
Right. So tell us, what's the local economy like? If someone were to move to Atlanta, can you provide examples of what the average single family home versus maybe townhouse or condo and maybe renting an apartment looks like?
Sure, your the averages, if you look online, are going to be less because they're taking over the metro Atlanta area. But for an average single family home, is starting around 450,000, and it can go upwards to millions. The highest price sale in Atlanta was 11 million last year, and Mariah Carey right now has her home on the market, or just sold for about 6 million. So we do have some celebrities in Atlanta. Condos for a one bedroom start around 250, and then they can go up to 2 million, just depending on what the amenities are. Rentals for a one bedroom is probably 1,500, 2,800 for a two bedroom. And rental rates have gone up. We did during the recession, the condos and of course housing prices had dropped dramatically. But in the last 3 years, all the pricing in Atlanta has gone up. And according to the average cost of living, if you're doing a survey, Atlanta's now 3% higher than the average of the US.
Hmm.
It's 4% higher in housing, 3.5% is higher for food, but healthcare is 10% cheaper and transportation's about 1% cheaper. And if you're doing comparisons on if you live in New York City, Atlanta's 80% cheaper than New York. It's 51% cheaper than Boston. It's 15% cheaper than Chicago, 11% cheaper than Miami. Washington, D.C. is 50%, 56% cheaper. And compared to Dallas, we're about 3% higher.
Hmm. That's interesting.
And I read like today there was something on Facebook where they talked about where the because of taxes and the cost of living, Georgia's ranked in the top 5 places to retire.
Good to know. Good to know. Yeah, it's got warm weather. The cost of living is lower than the big cities on the East Coast. New York. I'm from New York myself, so New York is pretty expensive. But yeah, that was a great comparison. Thank you for that. Can you give us some examples of utilities, electric bill, gas, taxes, water bills, stuff like that?
We do have taxes in Georgia, unlike Florida and Tennessee, where they don't have state taxes. But because we do have taxes, our gas prices are lower. Last year during the recession, when gas prices went up, the governor actually took away the state of Georgia gas tax, which saved us about 39 cents per gallon. Utilities are typically less expensive because of the mild climate you're in. So, yes, in the summer, your air condition may run $200 to $300 a month. Your gas bill would be probably the minimum. In the winter, if you've got a gas furnace, your bill's going to be more like $150 to $200. And as far as the water is, but for the most part, water's $75 a month. We do have local trash that goes with your water and sewer.
Okay. So not too bad.
Well,
Not too
and
bad.
also going back to the taxes, if you're 65 or over, and depending on how much money you make, you can take away the education fund, and that's a large percentage of your taxes. And
Oh, wow.
in Cobb County, which is northeast of Atlanta, you don't have to have a minimum requirement. We also have a homestead exemption in Georgia. And what that is if that's your primary residence, they give you a tax break of about 25% off your taxes because that's where you're local and you do your shopping. And so the other taxes you use for groceries and gas and those type of things are offset. So there's also a disabled veteran, and taxes are for like a $500,000 home or approximately $4,000 to $6,000 a year, where in some of your other cities, their taxes would probably be double that.
Hmm. I like the education tax over 65 that they take away. That's pretty helpful. Do you know if they tax Social Security?
They do not.
Oh, okay.
I do not think, as far as
The state.
well, I'm not sure about that.
Okay. Okay. All right. So on to the arts and culture scene. Tell us a little bit about Atlanta's arts and culture. I know it's a
Sure.
big city, so I'm expecting a lot of stuff going on.
You've got the Culture High Museum of Art, and then you've got the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra, the Fox Theater, which is the Broadway series, Atlanta Opera, you've got Atlanta Ballet, Atlanta Gay Men's Chorus. You've got plenty of local theater companies. Then you also we've got tons of college and universities in the city, including Georgia Tech, Morehouse, Emory University, Georgia State, Spelman, Kennesaw State, the University of Georgia, which is 1 hour away. They won the national championship twice in the last 2 years. Agnes Scott College, Clark Atlanta, Oglethorpe, Savannah College of Art and Design. All of those things bring extra culture to the city. So if you're looking for that type of thing, there's something always going on. With and a lot of with the gay groups, say like the prime timers, they will choose one of those things and go to that if there's a matinee and things like that. And some of the high museum brings in art exhibits, and they have once a month they have a free day. So if you want to go, then it's probably more people. But they've also done something in the last few years to try to get more men coming in, and they do a car show. And so they'll do like a 1920s and 30s cars, and those are just incredible to see. The difference, like they had a Clark Gable convertible that he had after Gone with the Wind. So that was kind
Wow.
of fun.
Yeah. Oh, that's incredible. Yeah, there's a lot to do. I'm all for those matinees because I can't stay awake past 8 o'clock at night when I see a
Sure.
Broadway show.
Right. Well, they also, things that we also have that are, I guess they're not really cultural, but things to do. We've got the Atlanta Botanical Gardens, which is right at Piedmont Park. And the Botanical Gardens is 30 acres. They've got a 10,000 square foot orchid center. And then Piedmont Park was actually developed by the same person who did New York City as far as Central Park. And that's right in the middle of the city. And that's got right under 200 acres with a lake. And so on any given day, you're going to see plenty of people out in the park walking, jogging, scootering. And then they've also attached to that, it's called the Atlanta Beltline. And the people who did the New York High Line came in and we pulled up railroad tracks. And it's a connection of all the neighborhoods in Atlanta. And it's going to be a 22-mile radius once it's complete. So that's got about a little over a fourth has been complete, but they're really putting the neighborhoods together, and so it's actually quicker sometimes to walk on the Beltline to where you want to go versus driving in the city.
Hmm. Interesting. So, yeah, definitely a lot to do. I don't know. I have this picture in my head of Gone with the Wind. Whenever I picture Atlanta, I'm like thinking of the mansions and the plantations and stuff like that, but it's not like that.
No, there actually, if you go outside the city in
Can you?
Madison, or there are some larger homes like that with the large columns, and several of those were actually used as an example for Gone with the Wind. And but we've got a new park that's opened up on the west side of town. It's Quarry, and it's 300 acres. And so if you don't like Piedmont Park, or you want to go somewhere different, you can go over there. If you're a bicyclist or a long range runner, they pull up the railroad tracks, and we have a Silver Comet Trail outside the city, and it actually goes 94 miles from the north part of Atlanta over to Anniston, Alabama. So a lot of
Hmm.
people will train there, or if they want to, train for a marathon or something like that, they will go over there and run on that. So there's a lot to do, and anytime every weekend there's something going on, and there's it's always you can, on a website or like Know Atlanta or a magazine that comes out. There's the restaurants, and there's just plenty of things that you can find to do if you want to do it, or you can just stay at home. Or we're also known as a city in the forest because of all of our trees. And one thing is when you're flying in, a lot of people don't realize how many trees are in Atlanta and surrounding areas. And
How
also
about
it's
peach
hilly.
trees?
We Peachtree. There's a funny thing about that. There's very few peach trees in Atlanta. If you go South Georgia, that's where all of our peach trees are. But there's 71 roads that have Peachtree listed as part of their street name. And
Really? 71?
71. And on the 4th of July, there's the Peachtree Roadways, which is the largest roadways in the country, and it has about 60,000 runners, walkers, joggers, and it starts up at in Buckhead and Lenox Mall around the mall, and it runs down to Piedmont Park, and that's the 4th of July, and it starts at 7 in the morning because of the heat.
Wow.
So something
Yeah,
to
I've
either
always. Go ahead.
you can either watch or participate.
Yeah. I've always heard of Peachtree Street. Is that downtown?
Peachtree Street starts in downtown, goes to Midtown, and then on up to Buckhead and outside the perimeter. And it's changed from a street to a road, and then it goes into Peachtree Industrial. So they change the names as the roads expands. But a lot of your neighborhoods actually are off of Peachtree, and Peachtree is the main street through town, and it takes you from downtown, which there's really not a whole lot going on other than there's a convention center, there's a universities, a few law firms, Centennial Olympic Park. CNN was with Ted Turner started there. They've just announced that they're closing the downtown CNN Center, and then they're going to move to their other location, which is up by Georgia Tech. So downtown, a lot of the businesses have moved because of the taxes, and so they moved to Midtown or Buckhead, which is Buckhead's the considered probably the most wealthiest part of the city. The governor's mansion's there. Across the street from the governor's mansion, Usher has a home. We do have quite a few celebrities that have lived here or live here currently. Elton John has a place on Peachtree. He's got a
Wow.
two story condominium and a high rise. Mariah Carey
Did
just sold her house.
you
Janet
ever see them
Jackson.
there?
Elton liked it because he could walk to the grocery store and people kind of left him alone. We do see a lot of celebrities because the movie industry has moved to Atlanta. They gave them a tax credit, and so a lot of your studios have moved from California or New York. We actually currently have 9 studios, and it's a $4 billion revenue for
Wow.
the Georgia market. And Tyler Perry was the first to move his studio to Atlanta, and now there's 8 others. Movies that have been movies or TV series: The Walking Dead, Ozark, Driving Miss Daisy, Avengers, Black Panther was filmed here, Forrest Gump, Smokey and the Bandit, which goes way back, Fried Green Tomatoes, Deliverance, and then
Wow.
there was a TV series In the Heat of the Night, which was filmed in Conyers.
Remember that movie?
Yeah, so there's a lot going on. Anywhere you're driving around Atlanta or outside, you're going to see the movies sets in neighborhoods or in downtown. They do a lot of those, so it's fun. If you want to be a stand-in, they have those as well. You can go be in a movie if you like.
I could see me being in The Walking Dead. Now I could picture The Walking Dead because you see, them wandering through streets and through, like kind of forest and greenery and yeah, I couldn't try out for that. And do my little Walking Dead thing. Oh, wow. Wow. I would have never known all of those movies and shows from Atlanta.
Yeah,
Cool.
and I guess one of the things is if you're into sports, we have every professional team. Plus, we have college. You've got for college, you've got Georgia Tech. Georgia State now has a football team. University of Georgia, which is an hour away, and they won the national championship this year and last year. We've got professional teams, including the Atlanta Braves, where they won the 2021 World Series. The Atlanta Falcons, football. The Hawks or the basketball team. We've got a soccer team, Atlanta United, and then the Atlanta Dream is the women's basketball team. And if you like to play tennis, Atlanta has the largest local team. It's called Alta, and it has over 70,000 members. There's
Wow.
71, yeah, there's 71 public golf courses, 48 private golf courses around Atlanta. There's horseback riding, and then coming up in April, which is not in Atlanta, but we are the home of the Masters golf tournament, which is absolutely incredible. It's in Augusta, Georgia. It's 3 hours away, but the whole town of Augusta shuts down, and it's if you ever get a chance to go, you should go, even if you don't like golf. It's just an incredible experience.
I've never been to Atlanta and now I want to go.
It's easy with the Atlanta airport, easy to get here.
Yep. Delta's a hub, I believe.
It
Is it
is.
Delta?
Delta's
Yeah.
the hub, and Southwest Airlines. There's 8 airlines, including United, American Airlines, Frontier, all of which fly into Atlanta. And the neat thing about the airport is it's not that far away. So, like if you're in Denver, the airport's, I think, 30 miles outside the city. Literally, You're 10 miles max from the airport, but we do have public transportation. We have a rail system, and you can get on that, and it will take you directly into
To the airport.
downtown, midtown, Buckhead. And then if you're far away, you can take a taxi and an Uber to get to your location. But there are a lot of things that are right outside of your stations. And in fact, some people, I never thought I would tell people if they moved here and they didn't have a car, because Atlanta is a driving town,
Hmm.
but people are moving here and they want to be able to walk to everything, and literally they don't have to have a car. There's shopping, there's groceries, there's restaurants. If you live in Midtown, you can get to the park.
It's walkable.
Everything's walkable up and down Peachtree Street and the neighboring. And then if you need a car, if for some reason the transportation bus or the rail system doesn't take you there, we have zip cars, or you can rent a car. Or I mean, I've even had to go to Home Depot, and I've rented a car for, or, really it was a truck, but for 75 minutes you can rent it. It's like $20,
Wow.
so you can definitely get around.
That's important for a big city, is to be walkable, because I know, the older I get, the less we want to drive and get stuck in traffic. So I'm all for finding a place that is walkable. To me, being able to walk to the grocery, to the pharmacy, to a doctor, close by to a hospital and an airport is very important. One of my criteria is at least 45 minutes. I have to be at least 45 minutes to an airport. So,
When it takes about from Midtown, you can on the MARTA rail system, it's 30 minutes. If you're driving or having somebody drive you or an Uber, it's about 20 minutes if without traffic. And of course, Atlanta is known for some of the heavy traffic, and they compare it sometimes to LA. I think the biggest thing is because if you're living inside the perimeter or you're living in a neighborhood, there are many ways in and out and to get around traffic, and you don't normally go out during rush hour. They kid about the rush hour starts at 7 in the morning to 9, and in the afternoon it can start at 3 o'clock and go to 7. But for a lot of those people, it's driving through the town or trying to get from the south to the north. We do have three interstates going through the city. We've got I-75, which comes from Tennessee to Florida, and then I-85 goes from Alabama to the Carolinas, and they sort of make an X in downtown Atlanta, and then I-20 goes from Birmingham over to the coast, so it cuts through the city as well, and that causes a lot of your traffic. And we do have a lot of, like 75 is known for the big trucks having to go from the
yeah.
north to Florida, but we typically can get around most of that. There are times you get caught in it, but there are many places you can go or you just don't go out during rush hour. And I was going to mention another thing that's interesting about Atlanta is we've had a lot of our Fortune 500 companies move to Atlanta. We've also had companies start in Georgia. Home Depot, UPS has moved here, Delta Airlines, of course, Coca-Cola it was born in Atlanta, and of course you don't call a soda or Pepsi, you're always drinking a Coke.
Coke.
Cash Registers just moved here. Norfolk Southern moved its headquarters from Virginia here last year. We've got Mercedes Benz and Porsche have both moved their U.S. headquarters here. And our top employers include Delta, Emory University, Home Depot, UPS, and you've got Georgia Tech, and then State Farm has a large presence here. So we've got a lot of Fortune 500 companies, and they're moving here because of the mostly it's the
Affordability and the weather.
and the weather and the low taxes.
Yeah, that's incredible. I didn't realize there were so many companies. Yeah, Coke especially, and Delta. I knew about Delta, but yeah, that's definitely impressive. If those Fortune 500 companies are moving there, there's a reason. So,
And we're also, Coke was invented here. We also have the first Waffle House, if you've ever
oh
been to
wow,
Waffle House. And
I
then
have.
Chick-fil-A, home of the chicken sandwich. They're located below the airport. They're headquartered here as well. And
Not
you
a fan
mentioned,
of Chick-fil-A.
oh, okay. Some people are, some people are not.
Yeah.
You mentioned walkability in downtown, and important to you is healthcare and your doctor's offices and hospitals. We've got 6 or more major hospitals in the perimeter area, and that includes Emory University. We've got a trauma center, which is Grady, Piedmont Hospital, Shepherd Spinal Center. We've got cancer centers, orthopedic doctors. There's anything that you need is you can find locally, and which is great because like in Midtown, there's a hospital, their doctor's offices are either where the hospitals are or nearby, and it's very close to MARTA if you want, or you can walk either way, but you can get to them very easily.
So, do you find, let's talk about a little bit about healthcare while we're on the subject. Do you find there's enough physicians to the population, or do you have long waits for doctor's visits?
No, not at all. You can get in very quickly. We do have a lot of the 24-hour care if you need to go somewhere. There's tons of those around town. But I think with Emory Hospital is a teaching hospital. We also have Morehouse College of Medicine. But what happens is a lot of people come into town to go to the university and then they end up staying. So,
Hmm.
and then a lot of the hospitals have bought the doctor's practices. But if you're sick, you can normally get in the next day or two if it's regular physician. I called yesterday and I was able to get an appointment for a physical on the 23rd of February. So you're out about 2 weeks.
That's pretty
Um,
good. Yeah.
but there's not the emergency rooms. Occasionally, you're going to be backed up if there's a problem. But you're not supposed to go if you try to go during when the shifts are changing. That's a problem often. But if you can go to an urgent care versus going to an
The
emergency
hospital.
room or a
Yeah.
hospital, you're probably better off. But it just depends on what. But I mean, there are plenty of hospitals around that you can go to. One of the interesting facts is there's 2 hospitals in the north side of the perimeter, and they call it Pill Hill because of the you can get your drugs and all that up there. But we have some fun names for areas in town, and we have a lot of one of the things. Well, going back to the healthcare, you can do as much, and then we also have plenty of assisted living places if that's something that's needed. They're all around town in various types, and if it's private versus public, but and some of them are gradually with a memory ward and things like that if that's something that is needed.
Very good. So, are there any 55 and older communities as well
There
in
are
the perimeter and outside? Probably more out than in.
they're mostly outside the perimeter, very few. I don't think I know of any inside the perimeter. They are becoming more popular, and they're normally in a suburb outside of Atlanta. But there's Del Webb and several others that are around that are over 55.
What's your opinion on those as opposed to just regular housing? Because in a way, it's nice that you have people of your own age, but there's a variety of that too. But then again, it's restricting if you ever wanted to sell, it's restricting to somebody that's 55 and older, usually.
There actually, I was thinking there is a condominium on that's inside the perimeter that sells to 55 and over. The prices used to be they were less, much less, but they were like an apartment. But then what's happened is the population has gotten older and there's more retirees. Those tend to not stay on the market at all, or very, very few. And in the 55 communities, 55 plus, what you're seeing is as those come available, if somebody's looking for that, those are going fairly quickly. So if they're not staying on the market, and normally they have the amenities of a clubhouse, a pool, a fitness center, and they have book clubs and things like that.
And pickleball. Let's not forget pickleball, the new craze.
Absolutely, pickleball, and so there's groups anywhere around Atlanta. And I think one of the things, I guess, if the neat thing is after being here for quite a while, is your friends become your family. And
Hmm.
so sometimes, unless it's totally necessary that you're having to move to a 55 community, I think Atlanta embraces older people as retirees. It's not just a young crowd, but it's a mixture, and people are, your family, if you need help or if somebody has a surgery or maybe they're going through cancer treatment, the families really come together, and you see where people make meals for each other, or they'll drive them to a doctor's appointment. And the retirees often are helping each other out, and that's very important. During the AIDS crisis, Atlanta came together, the communities came together, and opened they started serving food and taking foods to those AIDS patients who couldn't get out. And so that's become a huge thing. And since AIDS has gone down, or the death toll has gone down, we're now taking, it's a volunteer service, but they actually are now taking people or food to houses so that they will have a good meal per day. They take them one meal per day. And it's also, they check on the people because they'll knock on the door, leave the food, and it's a way to get a hot meal to people who could otherwise not get a nice meal.
Oh, that's good. That's really good. That's important. What can you tell me about Southern hospitality? Is there Southern hospitality? Is it real?
It is real, and that's one of the nice things about living here. I grew up and I've always lived in a southern town, so the hospitality, I think, just comes normal. But with Atlanta being an international community with people from all over the world living here, I think we've lost some of that, but we still know our neighbors. You speak, we wave. It is truly one of the nice things about living in Atlanta. And with your friends, if there's a problem, you can call on them and they're dependable. And I know in my neighborhood, we have gatherings twice a year to make sure that you're meeting new people and you're always speaking if you're out walking around and things like that. And, even little things like I have a neighbor across the street that's 88 years old and he's got a knee problem. And normally he can put out his trash can, but there are days when it's raining or it's cold. You can, the Southern hospitality is you just take the garbage can up to his garage and leave it, and hopefully he
Sweet.
won't. So it's, and that there's opening doors, there's, whatever it is, there's definitely some Southern hospitality. We have our sweet tea, and of course sometimes we do
Sweet tea.
sweet tea, and we sometimes we do put on the sweetness, even though we don't want to. But and some of
Yeah,
that is
like, well, bless your heart. And
it,
that's code for the,
exactly,
the middle finger. Well, bless your
absolutely.
heart.
And that happens quite often. But for the most part, I was thinking yesterday about this, and you're in traffic. We do let people out normally, or things like that. We're not honking horns all the time. It is a pleasant way to live, and I think it just makes the livability of when sometimes you're having a rough day. Sometimes just
Makes
somebody
it better.
saying something or being nice, it makes it nice, and you're not it's Atlanta is a large city, but it is amazing. I guess with only 500,000 in the city, you tend to run in people in the grocery store that or the gym and things like that. So it's not just let me go get in and out. And oftentimes, what happens is you do run into somebody and so you stay longer at the gym or the grocery store because you're chit chatting and catching up.
Yep.
So that's nice.
Yep. Now I'm thinking back. I'm like reminiscing to my childhood now. Now I'm thinking back in the days of AOL And the gay community in Atlanta, we used to call Atlanta Hot Atlanta
Absolutely.
because of the men, the hot men in Atlanta.
It is still considered hot Atlanta, mostly because of the summer temperatures. But there was, back in the 80s, we have a river, the Chattahoochee River, that runs through. And when they were kind of doing the circuit parties and things, Atlanta was known to have it was a party in August, and you would get in a raft and you would float down the Chattahoochee. And there was parties and everything associated with that. But unfortunately, with AIDS and the river not being quite as clean as it should be sometimes, that has gone away. But there are definitely a lot of hot men, and it's also Atlanta can be it. Atlanta's a melting pot for anybody that lives in the South, and if they're gay, it's the largest city in the South. So if you're really wanting to come in for moving in for business with all these Fortune 500 companies and work, Atlanta is probably the first place you go because it's very much an accepted thing to be gay. It's not a big thing anymore.
Yeah.
Not like it was in the 70s and 80s.
I would compare it a little bit, probably maybe to St. Pete in Florida. It's bigger, but as far as acceptance goes, both cities are very accepting.
Absolutely. Fort Lauderdale, of course, St. Pete has really become a gay mecca, but also a place where a lot of retirees go. But it's
Yeah.
also become a lot more expensive.
Yes.
One of the things that in Atlanta is not only the affordability, but we have world class shopping there's two malls across the street from each other, and now we've got a lot of outlet malls and things like that. That if you're looking for pretty much anything you can find in Atlanta, if not, you can always order it online, of course. But we've got 12,000 restaurants, approximately
Wow.
12,000 restaurants in Atlanta. So we've got international areas that you can find pretty much anything you want. We've got an international farmers market. There's also a DeKalb farmers market, and both of these have ethnic foods that you probably can't find in a local grocery store, but you can find them. And we've got vegan options. The Slutty Vegan is known now apparently out to the vegetarians, and
Oh, I
it's
like
become
that
one of the
name.
yeah, it's really a they've got several locations. And then as far as grocery stores, we've got Kroger, Publix, Whole Foods, Trader Joe's, Sprouts, Fresh Market. We've got the farmers markets. We do have pop-up farmers markets on Saturdays that are year round, and pretty much and like even Walmart. If there's Walmarts that are inside the perimeter. So if somebody's if you're tight on a budget, there's definitely some places that you can go to shop. Or if you like organic and you want to go to Whole Foods or Fresh Market, those are
Sprouts.
places. Sprouts, Kroger, and Publix are probably your main, but Trader Joe's, we've got two of those inside the perimeter, and they're a little bit smaller, but they also have some great things. Each of these and they're all close by. So even if you have to go from one place to the next, you're not but a 5 minute drive between the two or three.
Talk a little bit about the restaurants. So, are there world-class restaurants in Atlanta, like Michelin rated restaurants?
We have Bacchanalia, which is our 5-star restaurant. It's the only one in the city, but they have a second location that's with a different name. And then we've got a lot of local talent. And it's funny, it's Michelin. I think there's two in Decatur, which is a suburb of outside of Midtown. There were two of those on the list this year for the Michelin rating. And but for the most part, any type of food you want, and there's high end steakhouses to vegetarians to international foods. They're just all over the city. And you if you get Atlanta Magazine, or you can go online and look at it, there's a whole list of the food. So anywhere and anything that you want, including the fried chicken. There's always who
I was going
has
to
the
say
best fried chicken.
the southern cuisine.
Absolutely. And they even have those if you're coming in from out of town. There's several restaurants that they say you should go to. I don't always agree that those might be the best in town, but you can definitely get your fried chicken and your sweet tea.
Okay. And what are the other southern delicacies that they have?
Well, you've got a large amount of seafood that's flown in or driven in from the. Normally, I think it's flown in, but they catch it the same day or the next day. So we've got shrimp and grits. You got your biscuits. You've got your breakfast foods, your sausage, fried bacon. Bacon. Barbecue is a huge thing in Atlanta. There's tons and tons of barbecue restaurants all over town, and it just depends on a lot of them. Do they put the sauce in or not, or is an Alabama sauce which has got white. North Carolina's got vinegar, and some of them's got mustard. So it just depends on the sauce and what you like.
Hmm. I'm getting hungry. So there's no shortage of restaurants.
Not at all. You can go to a different restaurant every day and still not hit them all.
Did you say 11,000?
12,000 restaurants, over 12,000.
12,000 restaurants.
Now
That's
that's
huge.
well, and that's all of the Metro Atlanta.
Right.
But what you tend to do is, of course, is you find your favorites or what's in the neighborhood. I know in my neighborhood we've got probably 7 or 8 that are walkable, and you tend to go to the same ones over and over again. But it
Are
goes back.
you,
Oh, I was going to say it
go
goes
ahead.
back to the Southern hospitality of you go to these restaurants, you walk in, they know who you are. There's one restaurant I go to, the waiter already knows our drinks, and he knows
Hmm.
pretty much what food you're going to be ordering. And that's really nice. It makes it special.
Sure. Sure. Do you live in the perimeter in the
I
city?
do. I live right outside of Midtown in a neighborhood called Virginia Highland, and it's known for its walkability. And
Do you have a car?
I have, yes,
You have to
pro-
have it for the business.
well, you have to have it for the business, but we have 3 cars.
Oh,
We've been known to have 4 cars occasionally. So
oh,
it just
wow.
so most everybody has at least one car. We do have people that have moved here. We've got friends from the Philippines. They live in New York City and come to Atlanta part time. And we've got a friend from Argentina that grew up in Buenos Aires, and they are scared to drive, and so they do not have a car, but they're able to get around. The friend from Buenos Aires works and takes Uber or MARTA or walks quite a bit. So there are ways to get around, but I just prefer the convenience and the freedom of saying, okay, I need to go to the grocery store now. I don't want to wait on a bus or walk to the station or if it's rainy or
Sure.
cold. And you just get in the car, it's air conditioned or heated, you just go from there.
Sure. The United States is totally car centric and everywhere
Absolutely.
except for maybe New York or San Francisco. Other than those cities, you pretty much need to have a car and drive. I went from New York, Brooklyn, where I didn't have a car, and I got around by subway and bus and walk all the time to work and everything. And then we moved to Tampa, Florida, and that was a total change where I needed a car. And here in Phoenix, it's very car centric as well. So we have a car here. Hubby does most of the driving. We do have light rail here as well, right across the street. So it's easier for me. But on, you know, all in all, the US is totally set up for being a car driven nation, whereas Europe, maybe not so much.
Well, Georgia, 5 years ago or 6 years ago, when there was a push in the government for electric cars, Georgia also passed a tax credit. So the government was giving you, I think it was 7,500 or 12,000, and then Georgia gave a $7,500 credit if you
Wow.
owned an electric car. So a lot of people actually went out, including me, when the electric cars came down in on a. So I actually rented or leased a car for 3 years. It was $199 a month, but with a tax credit of 7,500, it basically paid for itself.
Hmm.
And with the electric car, you can actually drive in our HOV lanes, which is normally for 2 people or more. But if you have an electric car, you can drive and not get a
Solo.
ticket solo. And so that's been very helpful. So that made a push for a lot of people getting the electric charging stations put in your garage and things like that. So there's a lot of electric cars you see running around in Atlanta. And
Can I
we
ask
actually,
what you drive?
I was driving at the time a Nissan Leaf, but
Okay.
there were tons of Teslas in town, and now of course with everybody else coming out in outside of Atlanta towards Savannah, they're building the Rivian plant, which is a electric truck, and it's going to be a plant. And we also have a Kia plant in West Point, Georgia, which is about an hour and a half south of Atlanta. So we've got a lot of car manufacturing, and a lot of that's because they're not union based.
Got it. Tell us about the crime. Does Atlanta have a big crime issue? I know we have crime everywhere.
It Since COVID, we've had a lot of the teenagers and things like that getting into a lot more crime, and it is statistically, if you look at it, it's hard to say because every little section is different. And I would say if you're as a realtor, we always tell people if you're looking and you're concerned about crime, definitely call your local police. A lot of the things I went to a neighborhood event the other day and they had the police there, and the officer said that most of the crimes right now are people breaking into cars, people are leaving things in their car. And so a lot of it is just common sense. You don't leave anything in your car. Some people will leave their
Like
cars open.
like your keys.
Like, yeah, don't leave your keys, don't leave your computer. That happens, or bags, anything that people might take. And I think with inflation and money not going quite as far, we've seen more crimes. Also, our previous mayor in the city announced that they weren't going to chase shoplifting and shoplifters out of the mall. So all of a sudden, you get all these shoplifting events.
Wow.
So but as far as crime in itself, you don't want to go out at 2 a.m. to an ATM machine by yourself in a dark place. So a lot of it's just common sense. But we do have crime, and you just have to be aware. Some of it, unfortunately, is somebody being at the wrong place at the wrong time. But then a lot of the crime can be situated in areas that it could be gang related or people that know each other. But we do have programs like buyback on guns and things like that. We're trying to prevent it, but it's got a little bit out of hand recently. We have a
Everywhere.
lot everywhere, but even like they're saying that 77% of the cars that are stolen have the keys in it. And we do have, they call it sliders, where somebody's pumping their gas and somebody goes in on the other side, slides over, and takes off in their car. You know, the smart thing to do would be turn off your car, lock your door, and then put gas so somebody can't slide over and take your car.
See, when I lived in Florida, also, I'd be on this app, neighborhood app, and people would say, "Oh, my car was stolen," or you'd hear people or friends say, "Oh, my car was stolen. They broke into my car. They broke into my car." Okay, number one, did you have your keys in there? Yeah, I think so. Oh, and they took my gun. So you had your keys in your car and your gun in your car, and yeah, so just
Absolutely.
common sense, like
We
you
do like
said.
our guns in Georgia, but
You do.
we do. It's normally outside of the perimeter. You'll see, you got pickup trucks, and in the back of the pickup truck, you got your shotguns across the back, something like that, or hunters. But inside the city, people do have guns, and that seems to be a target. If somebody's breaking in a car, if they're going to apartment complexes, they're definitely looking for guns left in a car.
Is it open carry in Georgia?
In some areas, yes. I know I was at North
I'm still
Georgia, and
not
I
used to that.
no, it's a little different when you see somebody walking around with a gun, but
Yeah.
you don't. I've seen it one, maybe at a riot or something. You may see if it's somebody carrying something, but normally no, you just don't see
I see
that.
it. I see it all the time here, but that's a different story. So, okay. So basically, for comparison, crime in comparison to any other major city, it's about the same.
It is. I think it's lower than a Chicago, New York, Philadelphia. Definitely lower than that. But and the governor and the mayor are working together to really combat that. So and we've got places like Buckhead is above Midtown, and even Midtown they both have extra police on duty. And I know there was a after a verdict or something happened a couple of weeks ago, and we were going to have some rioting downtown, or it was a not rioting, but to avoid the rioting, the governor called in your troops, and so there were like 5,000 troops, and so the people that were getting together for a protest, ended up only being like 50 people. So we try to do things like that to kind of prevent crime.
Yeah.
And the city and the businesses got together in Midtown at one point when crime was so high, and they actually pulled together a police force that is specifically in Midtown. Now they're working on one in Buckhead, so they really try to prevent crime from getting much higher. But for anybody that's looking, if you come through town, you definitely want to just check out or call the local police and meet with them, or call them, and that will give you specifics on the neighborhood.
Yeah. Check out, scope up the neighborhoods for sure. So, do you wish that you had anything in Atlanta that you don't have that you may have had in a different place? But you've
We
been in
don't
Atlanta for so long, so
we don't have a big body of water.
ah,
We don't have an ocean, and the lakes are an hour to hour and a half away. And the Chattahoochee River just doesn't quite cut it as far as going swimming. But for the most part, I think that's the biggest thing that we don't have. We do have the Georgia Aquarium, which was the largest aquarium in the world at one point. We've got a civil rights museum. We've got a college football hall of fame. We've got the Olympic Park. We've got a zoo, lots of museums. We've got the largest Hindu temple outside of India that's made of marble.
wow.
So we do have some things that are good. So I don't know. Other than that, we've got our professional teams. We love our SEC football.
Pretty
So
much have it all,
pretty much, and
except
the
for the
cost of
water.
living, except for the water. And a lot of people get together or have a second home. Not everybody, but if you want to get away, the lakes are an hour and a half away. The mountains, there is a large gay population in the Blue Ridge. It's called Blue Ridge. It's an hour and a half outside of Atlanta. So you've got your cottages, your mountains. It also has a lake. So a lot of times, if you don't have a second home, one of your friends probably does. Or,
Sounds good.
and I guess the only thing we don't have is I don't have a swimming pool in my yard. But because of the Four Seasons, I'm not sure I need that.
Right. Very good. So, in wrapping up, what would you say to our audience if they're thinking to relocate or retire in Atlanta?
I would say come visit. Again, spring is coming up. If you're interested, it's a great time to visit Atlanta. The flowers are in bloom. It's really pretty at that time of year. Our cherry trees are already blooming. Daffodils have already bloomed this year. So we're going to have an early spring, we believe. And just come and visit and stay for a few days. Get a rent a car, drive around the city. If you want to check out some of the areas outside of Atlanta, Madison's an hour away. You can go to Savannah, which is 3 hours away if you've never been there, and just really get an idea of what it's all about. If you're interested, you're more than welcome to contact me, and I would be happy to talk to you or show you around or give you some places to go and see. We do have a lot of neighborhoods, and that's one thing a lot of people are amazed at is how close the neighborhoods are. And so you can go from one to the next in a matter of literally crossing the road. And in it, you've got so many things to do that if whatever your interests are, if it's cultural, the symphony or ballet or a Broadway, we've got Tina Turner coming up next, I believe, in the next couple of weeks. So anything like that, if you're wanting to look at, or a concert at one of our stadiums, look and see what's going on and then plan your trip accordingly. And there's definitely plenty of hotels, Airbnbs to stay in.
Great. Mark, how long have you been a realtor?
It's 21 years,
Wow.
and a lot of my business comes from being in the community and knowing a lot of the people, and like
Hmm.
going to Colonnade and at a restaurant on a Friday night. You start going on Friday nights, and by the time
You know everybody.
you know everybody, and they call me mayor because I just know everybody and go up and say hello to everybody, and so that's really helped me as far as my real estate career.
Tell our audience again, give us a recap of where they can find you on social media.
Sure, my website is www.markcamp. My email address is mark@markcamp.com.
Great. Well, you hear that, folks? If you're ever looking to relocate to Atlanta, Mark's the man to look up.
Thank
So
you.
thank you, Mark. Thank you for being a guest on our podcast. It was definitely very educational. I enjoyed it very much. Now I know and I have a great picture of what Atlanta is like. So thanks again for your time.
Well, thank you, and we look forward to you to visiting Atlanta.
I will do that. Thank you, Mark, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Where Do Gays Retire podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to our podcast and consider making a donation by clicking the coffee cup on any page at www.wheredogaysretire.com. Each cup of coffee that you buy costs $5 and goes towards helping us continue the podcast. Thank you for your continued support.